Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Vaylantz Yugioh deck profile for post Darkwing Blast. We did get a new card in the latest Yu-Gi-Oh booster pack, which gave us access to some more setup that this deck is meant to do. The Vaylantz deck is sort of like a board game style Yu-Gi-Oh deck in which you set up field spells on your opponents and your own field, and then basically move around the different Vaylantz monsters like board game pieces on a board game, and to, play style in the same manner, getting out your big boss monsters in which to defeat your opponent. And it's a pendulum deck, so you can set up a lot of these plays through pendulum summoning, but a lot of it just comes to utilizing the different columns we have in the deck with that setup for all of your plays. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For the Vaylantz monsters, I run 3 copies of Shinonome, the Vaylantz Priestess. For the Pendulum Scale, during your main phase, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in the same column. Also, you cannot special summon non-Vaylantz monsters for the rest of this turn, except from the extra deck. You can only use this effect, Shinonome, the Vaylantz Priestess, once per turn. So the limitation at least gives us access to a good variety of cards from the extra deck for us to use. And during your main phase, if you control this special summon card, you can add 1 Vaylantz spell from your deck to your hand. This search also comes in handy for the play of being able to add any of our needed cards, including our new Vaylantz Awakening solo activation. And with this card, if it's in the monster zone, moves to another monster zone, you can add 1 Vaylantz monster from your deck to your hand, except for Shinonome. You can only use each effect once per turn. So it's search power upon search power, and that's why it's a definite 3 of in the deck for you to use all together. I also run 2 copies of Hojo, the Vaylantz Warrior. With this card, you can target 1 face-up card in either spell and trap zone, return it to the hand. If this card is in the monster zone, moves to another monster zone, you can fusion summon 1 fusion Vaylantz monster from your extra deck. And also, with this card, using monsters from your hand field and or pendulum zone. So some of the bigger boss monsters that we run in the deck are Momonaka, the Vaylantz United, and also your Vaylantz Genesis Grand Duke, which are some pretty big powerhouses in the deck altogether. So having a fusion answer using this card is part of the important part of the play setup with this card. I also run 2 Nazuki, the Vaylantz Ninja. With this card, you have an option to target 1 other card in the main monster zone, move that monster to an adjacent horizontal zone. If this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, you can target 1 Vaylantz monster in your spell and trap card zone and special summon it to your main monster zone in the same column. You can only use each effect of Nazuki, the Vaylantz Ninja, once per turn, so you have more of the setup thanks to this card, being able to move other cards and gain the added effects of the cards we run for our different Vaylantz monsters all together. It gives you more of a play style, and also if Vaylantz World Shinra Bancho is in the field zone, or if you control a water Vaylantz monster, you can special summon this card from your main monster zone. So with this, you have the water play style for your, Vaylantz monsters, being able to use your Shinonome for the additional setup for these cards, being able to have that special summon for the water Vaylantz monsters, which are the humanoid ones. The machine ones will be the fire monsters that we run. Along with the machine monsters, I am running 3 Vaylantz Buster Baron. During your main phase, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in the same column. Also, you can rest this turn, except for you're limited to the special summon, which is the good majority of the different pendulum effects, being able to special summon them in the same column. And then also with this card, if you control this special summon card, you can target 1 other Vaylantz monster in your main monster zone, move that monster you control to an adjacent zone. And also, if this card in the monster zone moves, you can then target 1 card in either player's pendulum zone and place it face up in an adjacent spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell. So this is another part of moving the different pieces we have to then utilize later with our Vaylantz monsters. I also run 3 Vaylantz Voltage Viscount. With this card, during the main phase, if you control this special summon card, you can place 1 face-up Vaylantz Pendulum monster from your extra deck face-up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell. So more ways to gain access to those extra deck monsters thanks to your Voltage Viscount. What's also great about Voltage Viscount, it is a level 4 machine type monster, which gives us access to our Gear Gigan X, which can then in turn give us access to another main deck monster to help with our fusion summon, which I'll get to in just a bit. I also run the 3 Vaylantz Mad Marquise for the play of rolling a 6-sided dice, excavating that many cards from the top of your deck, as many as you can. If you do, add 1 excavated Vaylantz card to your hand and shuffle the rest into the deck. And if this card in the monster zone moves to another zone, which a lot of these plays will also come down to the very important needed card in the deck, which is Senate Switch, which can also be searched out in the deck also. And then I also run one copy of Vaylantz Dominator Duke, more of a bigger boss monster. You can target one set card in the spell and trap card zone. That set card cannot be activated this turn. And if this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, you can target one face-up monster in your opponent's main monster zone and take control of that monster, but it cannot declare an attack nor activate its effects. So you can use it as material for other cards. That's why I only run one of this card. It's more of a bigger boss monster. Being a level 8 doesn't really limit us either to our Pendulum Summon, because I am running 3 of the new Hanshi Yugioh Spirit, 1 of the new Scale 9s. If a monster's Pendulum Summon, you can return this card to your hand, clearing up the Pendulum Zone for you then to play other Vaylantz cards, which is what I really like about the Yugioh Spirit Pendulums. This one just definitely does help for more of the options when it's normal summon to return all the cards in the same column back to your hand to reset some of the other cards we run in this deck, being a deck that focuses on the many different movements of all your columns and adjacent ones in the deck. And for the other Pendulum monsters, just running 3 copies of Abyss Actor Curtain Raiser as another easy special summon. Remember, it is a once per duel special summon, but then you have access to it from the extra deck to summon back onto the field as another level 4 monster. With the last monster for the actual playstyle of the deck being 1 Cyberstein. This is the card you'll search out for your Gear Gygax. We don't use life points for anything in this deck, so being able to spend 5,000 life points and then just summon out one of our Vaylantz fusion monsters is a very useful play, because then your normal summon will most likely want to be your Cyberstein. You're not limited to what you can special summon from the extra deck with this deck, so you can at least summon out your Gear Gygax and then have your normal summon be the Cyberstein, which you'll then pay 5,000 life points for, to then special summon out your bigger Vaylantz fusion monster, getting around the need of actually having to use your other monsters, and then use those other monsters in the deck for another extra deck play, including the Cyberstein. And then lastly, for the main deck monsters, I also run 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. You just have enough setup with many of the other Pendulum monsters in the deck, so this card just helps for an additional option to be able to stop your opponent through hand traps, and, you know, basically if they don't want to use their graveyard or search any card to their hand. Moving on now to the spells, I run 3 of the new Vaylantz Awakenings, solo activation. You place 1 Vaylantz Pendulum monster from your deck in your Pendulum zone. If this card in the field zone, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Vaylantz monster in your main monster zone. Move that monster you control to an adjacent horizontal monster zone. You can only use each of the following effects of Vaylantz Awakening, solo activation once per turn. So this can just activate more of the many different monster effects and then just place them on the, Pendulum scale from your deck as well. It's just an easy search. This card can't be Ash Blossomed either because it places it in the Pendulum zone. It doesn't add to your hand. Very similar to the Crystal Beast setup, so a great spell to rely on and really have no fear of activation against your opponent. I also run 1 copy of Vaylantz Wars, the Place of the Beginning. You add 1 Vaylantz field spell from your deck to your hand, then you can apply the following effect. Destroy 1 Pendulum monster you control, and if you do, add 1 Senate switch from your deck to your hand. And if this card is in the graveyard except the turn it was sent there, you can banish this card to place 1 face-up Pendulum Vaylantz monster from your extra deck in your Pendulum zone. You can only use each effect once per turn. So taking up these scales is another great setup with this card, but searching out Senate Switch, which is also another one of that we run in the deck and just needed because once per turn you can target 1 monster in your main monster zone and choose one of its unused adjacent horizontal monster zones and move that target to that zone. So just being able to move your monster to the added spot will not only activate the many different plays we have for our Vaylantz cards, but be also to set up the different plays we may need to use for the unused zone after it's been moved from. I also run 2 copies of each of the field spells, so 2 copies of Vaylantz World, Shinra Bansho. When this card is activated, you place 1 Vaylantz field spell from your deck face up in your opponent's field spell. So then you also have the play of using the other one in the same way. And with this card, if there are 2 face-up cards in the field spell zones, the turn player can target 1 monster in their own spell and trap card zone, and they can special summon that card to their own main monster zone in the same column. The turn player can only use this effect once per turn. And 2 of the Koenig Weissen, with this card having the same activation play to then place the other field spell, and then the turn player can then target one of their effect monsters in the opponent's main monster zone in the same column as one of their monsters and place that in the opponent's face up as a continuous spell. So this is kind of like the board game play where the turn player makes their move, taking one of their opponent's pieces and either taking it and using it for their own monster zone or placing it back in their opponent's monster zone. And then for the rest of the main deck spells, 1 Call by the Grave and 3 copies of Dark Rule No More. The biggest weakness for this deck is just having your opponent's monster effects to disrupt your own plays. So being able to use Dark Rule No More and the hand trap stopping of Call by the Grave definitely does come in handy for this deck altogether. And then moving on now to the extra deck for the Fusion monster, running 1 copy of Momonaka, the Vaylantz United, a scale 10 monster. You can activate one of these effects. You can special summon this card to your main monster zone, but it must be in the same column, and you can make one monster in your main monster zone move to its adjacent monster zone, or you can only use each effect of Vaylantz United. This is the pendulum scale effect, remember, once per turn, and it needs 3 Vaylantz monsters to normally Fusion summon it out. Most of the time you can use Hojo, but I would say the Cyberstein is another great way to go about it. You also have the play during the main phase. You can target 1 effect monster in your opponent's main monster zone, place it face up as a continuous spell in the same column, and then also destroy the occupying card if the monster zone your opponent loses life points equal to that attack of that occupying card. You can only use this effect once per turn, and if it's destroyed by your opponent's card effect, you can place it in your pendulum zone, activating the pendulum scale effects after this card resolves. No limitations to its special summon, like I said, with Cyberstein, and same for your Vaylantz Grand Duke, also running 2 copies of this card, having more of the pendulum setup as well, and then being able to special summon more of our many different Vaylantz monsters thanks to this card on the field. And for some of the Link monsters, I run 2 Beyond the Pendulum for more setup, just needing 2 effect monsters, including a Pendulum monster. It shuts down our own Pendulum effects until we Pendulum summon, but being that Search can just give you that 1 needed card to make use of, and there's no limitations to the extra deck summoning, so we can use our Vaylantz monsters and then have full access to many of our different Link monsters, including the 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Cross Sheep, 1 Barricade Board Blocker, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, the 1 Zephyr Metaltron for the extra deck special summons, and for the bigger boss monster Link monsters, 1 Apollosa and 1 Access Code Talker. As for the Xyz monsters, I run 1 Gear Gigant X, this is for the Cyberstein Search, 1 Baguska, and 1 Magister Paladin, the Ascending Draco Slayer. Now, as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, with the newest Vaylantz Awakening solo activation, you place 1 Pendulum monster from your deck face up in your pendulum zone. If this card is in the field zone, you can banish this card from your graveyard and target 1 Vaylantz monster in your main monster zone. Move that monster you control to an adjacent horizontal monster zone. So you have the activation of your Vaylantz Awakening. So you can set your Shinonome, and with this card during your main phase, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in the same column. So you just move it up to the same column with this card. And then also you're limited for the Vaylantz special summoning, but during your main phase, if you control this special summon card, you can add 1 Vaylantz spell from your deck to your hand. So then what you can do is then search out the field spell, depending on which one you want to go for the play, because whichever one you activate, your opponent will be getting the other one in their field spell zone as well. And then that will make your solo activation in the graveyard active as well, being able to target 1 Vaylantz monster in your main monster zone and move it, so you can then banish this card, moving your Vaylantz Priestess, activating the Priestess then to then add 1 Vaylantz monster from your deck to your hand. And this sets up the whole play, because then you can just go ahead and activate the same pendulum scale since you moved your Shinonome to a different zone, activating it and placing it in the same zone. If Vaylantz World Shinrabancho is in the field zone, which it will be since you searched it out thanks to your Shinonome, you can then have your card, or if you control a Water Vaylantz monster, meeting both the requirements of this card, special summon this card to your main monster zone, giving you the 2 needed monsters on the field, or otherwise having your Vaylantz Warrior have the setup thanks to this card and the field spell ready to go, giving you the easy access, and that is what the spell was meant to do, just be a 1-card answer, because with this 1 card, we were able to set up the 2 field spells, get us 2 monsters on the field, and still have the potential 4 cards in our hand to either complete the pendulum scale, going for a bigger summon, giving us 3 monsters, or even an additional card to move Hojo the Vaylantz Warrior, to then activate its fusion effect to fusion summon even just the 2 monsters on our field for some of our bigger fusion monsters thanks to this card. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed it. Like I said, it's a really awesome pendulum deck. It is kind of complex, but once you practice with it and get the hang of some of the different spells and setups you're meant to do for the summoning, it really does become a very fun and awesome deck. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.